The movie doesn't do a very good job of telling you what PK means, but you could infer that PK means he's drunk, but Amir Khan in this movie doesn't act drunk at any point.
No, he's just weird.
Yeah.
Like, he's an alien, so okay, fish out of water story, got it. But, like, why are you calling him tipsy? Like, if I were to be calling someone tipsy, it would be because they were, like, noticeably intoxicated, right? Like, walking, like, stumbly, tripping
Not
over
just, like,
themselves.
weird, like, just, like, kind of, like, out of touch with reality is more what it feels like.
Yeah. Just, like, a surreal painting of a person.
He doesn't understand how to be a person because he's not a person in the way that, you know, the humans in the movie are.
Right.
On this episode of the Culture Cast, I am still your host, Chris Dashy, much to the chagrin of many, and I'm joined by one of the hosts of the Scary Stories We Tell podcast, a real mensch in my book, the one and only podcaster, filmmaker, human being, Jess Byard.
Salve.
Learn Hindu.
20 days of Duolingo and I can say hello in Italian.
But learning Italian is not going to help you with a Hindu film, though.
No, I chose the wrong language. That is true.
Right. On this episode of the Culture Cast, we are continuing Indian Cinema Month to coincide with us launching the Bollywood Cinema Club show, a bi-weekly, once every other week show all about just Indian cinema. But we're watching Indian cinema over here at the Culture Cast, and we're going to be talking about a little film from 2014 that made a whole lot of money. 7th highest grossing Indian film of all time. The one and only Amir Khan starring as, like Jess and I have already mentioned, a little alien in PK.
अरे पहचाने नहीं का हमका हैं? हम पीके हूं पीके
नमूना समझते हो ना? सैंपल था वो। गलतियां सुधारने की आदत थी उसे। हेडलाइट सी आंखें थी और फ्लाइंग सॉसर जैसे कान। उसके सतरंगी कपड़े और उसका अतरंगी डांस। पान देखते ही मुंह में पानी आ जाता था। कहता था शहर के हर ब्रिज पर होते हैं एटीएम, जितने पैसे चाहिए निकाल लो। और हर सुनसान गली में होती है कपड़ों की दुकान, जो पसंद आए पहन लो। लोगों ने ना उसको समझा ना उसके तरीके। जितना अजीब था वो, उतना ही दिल के करीब था। मेरा दोस्त, एक बूंद तक नहीं पी थी उसने, पर नाम था पीके।
So the film is directed by Raj Kumar Hirani, written by Raj Kumar Hirani and Althar Joshi. It stars Amir Khan, Anushka Sharma, and Sushant Singh Rajput, and Boman Irani, for those of you who have seen Three Idiots like I had. And the film is, yes, all about Amir Khan as PK, an alien who comes to Earth only to then have his telephone effectively stolen by
his remote.
Yeah, by a wandering vagrant, and wouldn't you know it, he gets himself into all sorts of fish out of water adventures, including a rather extended musing on organized religion, which is not at all where I was expecting this movie to go.
Rather extended is a very generous way of putting
It's like the entire third act, and possibly one could even make the case the second act, and you could even make the case the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jess, tell me a little bit about PK.
I thought it was okay. I gotta admit that of the Bollywood cinema that I've watched for this podcast and Culturecast, other podcasts. I gotta say that this is the first one that I was actually kind of bored with after a while. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. I'll get to specific reasons why as we move on through this, but I will say that it has not been my favorite. It's not to say that it's not good. I appreciate it, but it's just wasn't my favorite.
I like yourself, never seen it before. It is readily available on Netflix. We always talk about on the Bollywood Cinema Club podcast where you can find these movies. This is readily available on Netflix. It is 2 hours and 30 minutes. So again, kind of fits the mold of a more
standard.
Typical Indian cinema film. And I was kind of expecting that was going to be your response to the movie, only because this movie is a little like fantastical to the point where stuff that you and I have watched together before, like your reaction and your like analysis and critique of things, like I could kind of tell that this probably wasn't going to be your bag, because it is a little, fantastical reality. It's a little kind of too whimsical for its own good at times. It's a lot. There's a lot of whimsy here.
It's very sweet and very cheesy.
Almost infantile at times with its like boiling down of like, I appreciate taking like, because in Three Idiots, it's essentially very much a takedown. That movie is in a lot of ways a takedown and kind of a musing on Indian culture in regards to education and expectations. And this is about, cultural lines and religion. I think Three Idiots did that thing better, where they're kind of talking about and having a frank, open dialogue about Indian culture and how expectations are formed and met and people and how that factors into education. I think they were trying to do that here with religion, obviously. I just wonder if this was the right way to go about doing it, because it almost kind of clashes with what the other movie that they're showing us is, because it's a fish out of water story, but then it becomes like a real long, prolonged musing on organized religion and how that affects the lives of the people in it, outside of it, not involved at all. Like I think this was an interesting way to go about it, because you have an alien, which makes sense. He has no frame of reference. He makes it clear he has no frame of reference for religion. He comes from essentially like the planet that Drax comes from in Marvel is kind of what it feels like. They're very like matter of fact. They're very surface level. They can't lie, is what he says at some point. But I feel like this movie is a little too, like you've kind of mentioned, cutesy. And that's, for me,
too cutesy.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't a terrible issue. Like I could still kind of get on board with it. But there are moments in this movie where I'm just kind of like,
it just became very grating for me. And like you said, at times it does feel very infantile, because while it is taking a stance on organized religion, and a stance that I agree with for all intents and purposes, that it is, at one point there's a moment where he takes different people who are different religions and puts them in the clothing of other religions, and just to make the point of, see, anybody can wear these clothes and it doesn't matter what you believe, is still what you believe. And for all intents and purposes, I agree with this message, but it didn't really go to a level that really discussed anything beyond a surface level.
Right.
And for a 2.5 hour long movie, I'm going to need a bit more, either a bit more exploration and trying to like really push your point like to a really subversive way to make it like really engaging, or I need the characters to be charming and fun and like wanting to be around like the other movies that we've watched, and recently. While yes, there's always a bit of cheese to Bollywood movies, it's a bit more fun and tongue-in-cheek in certain settings. And in this one, it just felt very grating and kind of dumb at some points, where it just felt very...
Speaking down to the audience?
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe less speaking down to the audience, but assuming that the audience is not going to be able to really process a in-depth, kind of nuanced, complex thought or theory or musing or idea on,
like, I would have liked religion. A more philosophical, like I would have liked a more philosophical kind of, let's get some dark humor in here. Let's really, because it's also not very funny. Like, it's not, and I understand like the language barrier and everything can definitely be, at least for me, can be something, because like for me, when I'm listening to something that's supposed to be funny, a lot of it is in delivery, right? You know, at
Right.
least from Westerner standpoint, a lot of how you make something funny is in the way that you deliver it with cadence and things like that, and specific word choice. Where sure, if I'm watching a movie and where I'm reading subtitles that are not obviously exactly what they're saying because it's just translation directly, I can understand it's not going to land as much. But given the fact that we have watched other movies that are still within the, you know, romantic comedy realm and that have had actual legitimate funny moments where I'm actually laughing at them, I don't feel like that barrier is enough to like stand on as a reason why, like, oh, I just didn't, you know, get it because of that. It's like, I just, again, it felt very juvenile.
Well, and you know, I don't think not focusing on religion would have changed the juvenile nature of the movie. I think the juvenile nature of the movie is intentional, obviously, like the juvenile performance from Amir Khan, because it, you know, it even to the point where they're doing the dance, they're doing like the Chaplin dance at one point. They're doing a Charlie Chaplin dance. Like it's very apparent what they wanted out of this movie, because half of the time Amir Khan's not even talking. It's very much like a silent performance. Like he's emoting, he's doing a lot with his face and his body.
Yeah, he's vamping.
Yeah, like big time. And like I'm here for that big time. I love Amir Khan.
Sure.
I think he's fantastic, but they don't give him a lot to do, really. They're just like,
don't give him anyone really funny, great to play off of.
Well, let's talk about the love angle in this movie. So Anushka Sharma plays Jagu, who is a woman that we're introduced to at the beginning of the movie, and she meets Sarfaraz, who is her boyfriend, but he's Pakistani and she's Indian, you know, Hindu, Muslim, can't get along, won't get along. Their families won't, not them. They get along just fine. So one day they, you know, she says, I'm dating this guy who's Pakistani. Her family says, nope, you're not. They bring in His Holiness, who is a holy man who the family believes in essentially implicitly, at least the father does. And he says he's going to leave you. He's going to betray you. She goes to get married the next day. He doesn't show up. She gets a note saying our families don't get along, so we shouldn't get married. And she leaves, goes back to India. That's where the movie kind of actually finally starts, is what it feels like. You could take all of her characters' romance stuff out of this movie, and I think you would have a much more interesting movie that I get why the movie,
because she's also a journalist,
right? But she's also,
need to mention that,
is she in love with the alien? Like, I don't understand the dynamic. I don't know,
man. I realize that that's what the movie, like, for all intents and purposes, and you know, for how a romantic comedy script beat outline would go. Yes, the movie wants us to think that they are, you know, at some point they would be together because
they have a song together.
They have a song together, and they're, for all intents, the man and woman, you know, we'll say man lightly, but he's an alien, but he's man-shaped.
That's fair.
The man and woman in the romantic comedy, that yes, they would be love interests. And they have a song, they have that whole song about how love is the love is a waste of time, and you know, I'm fine with wasting my time. So yeah, definitely that's the love interest. But she's annoying. She's an annoying love interest. She is absolutely like top tier, one of the like the stereotypes of like what I dislike in romantic comedy protagonists, where they're just very exaggerated and boisterous, but not particularly deep as a character, like beyond just what they want. There's nothing else past that. And like,
she's motivated by the story, getting a good story. Like that's it. Which
is fine. That's screenwriting 101. Your character has a want, and you have to, you know, either fulfill or not fulfill that want. But they also need other things that spawn from that want and make them fully realized characters. And she just is not. And he, as the alien, you know, like you said, he's kind of the blank slate that everybody else is kind of, you know, bouncing off of, because his character's literally absorbing information.
Right.
Like by just holding hands, like not talking, not anything, you know. And now he is talking, but you know, for the most part, like we said, he's just vamping on camera. which is fun and it's great. And he's, got a very, distinctive look about him in this movie. But in order for that to work, you need to have these other characters be more interesting and complex and have more needs and wants than basic level things. Otherwise, it feels very stale and stiff. And that's what it felt for me.
No, I can totally see that,
because there's also not a lot of chemistry, and I think that's why that's why you're asking, like, are they love interests, right? Because there's really no chemistry between.
Not really. No, there is no chemistry.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's an overplaying of maybe on the part of Alien where he's like too detached. And we don't really ever see, he's supposed to have that growth moment, right? And we're supposed to see it in that song where it's like, oh, wait, I'm realizing I'm falling in love with you. But no, there's nothing. There's nothing between them.
And yet it's the centerpiece of the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I would actually contend the parts of the movie that work for me are everything that takes place in the prison cell, which is just a flashback. It's like an hour-long flashback of him telling her all about where he's been and what he did since he landed, because it kind of just goes, he lands, gets his remote stolen, and then we cut away to her for like a half an hour. And then we finally come back to her and him.
For no reason.
Yeah. And that's the thing about the framing device and the structure of this movie. It would lead you to believe and would try to convince you that Jagu, the female lead of the movie, is as important as PK is, but he's ultimately the main character. And it becomes readily apparent that they just aren't interested in fleshing out her story, because I guess it would get in the way of telling his story, which is why they're not love interests, but then they just have that one song together trying to make us believe that they are. It's like if they had made it that he is picking up on things that aren't there because he's an alien, and they had gone into that and maybe made that part of it like, oh, he doesn't understand the social cues and he's mistaking them because he is an alien, that would have made total sense. But Jagu is not pining for Sarfaraz at all throughout the movie. She has forgotten him to the point where we have forgotten him.
He's gone.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, he's gone.
You don't see him. Like, we have that half-hour-long setup, which is essentially just there. Which, with a song, arguably the best song in the whole movie.
Yeah,
it's the least annoying song of the entire movie.
I think the song and the songs in the movie are okay, but I think you're right. I think that's probably
they're okay, and they come in. They're not very well peppered in. They kind of come out of weird places and don't feel as like seamless as other sequences.
Organically integrated into the movie. It's like all of a sudden you can kind of see everything. You can kind of see the extras coming.
For a song now.
Yeah, the extras are coming in from stage left and stage right, and here they are. And now here comes the song.
Strange.
Yeah,
it feels very strange. But yeah, arguably the best song in the movie is that first song with Sarfaraz, and that. All that does is essentially all that's used from what we see, what we learn as we watch the rest of the movie, is that exists purely to set up that it comes from this family who's very, who's extremely into their religion. And so much so that they're upset that she wants to marry somebody who's Pakistani. And it's just to establish that conflict there that she's gonna, that she has with her parents. And that's it. That is her whole crux for the whole rest of the movie, is just to get back at His Holiness and her parents for effectively ruining this relationship.
So she thinks.
Which I think we all know from coming from a mile of fucking way. We all knew that was not
honest to God, that I did not. I honestly was taken aback by that twist, only because it was, I don't know how to say it in a way that doesn't sound mean, but it felt like the most bullshit way to get those characters back together. Oh, it was no. It was someone else who thought that they were supposed to give it to someone who had a thing that you took by accident, and therefore you got the note not meant for you, but the note completely made it sound like it was me. Like, okay, why couldn't she just fucking fall in love with the alien at the end of the movie? Why did you have
Right.
to bring a character back who hadn't been in 2 hours of this movie to undercut the emotional impact of this movie?
Yeah.
Like, the movie falls on its face in the last 20 minutes because instead of her and him being together, which again, I don't give a shit who she's with at the end of the movie. I'm talking about from a narrative standpoint, that's the only outcome
Yeah.
that makes sense. And they have to jump through so many hoops and do so many low limbo passes to make sense out of a scene that I didn't
Right.
think there was anything going on.
I assumed that it would be a situation in where, okay, the note wasn't, like, or that he essentially would learn the error of his ways, right? Like that he would just have this epiphany and at the end of the movie come back and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, because it fits in with the theme of the movie of, recognizing differences and understanding that we're still just regular people despite these different belief systems. Like we're all just the same people. So I just assumed that it would just be like some convenient, oh, I realized the error of my ways.
Or I saw you on TV or
I
something.
saw you on TV. Yeah, I saw you on TV with this guy, and you really seemed like you found yourself, and that really started to make me think, and and blah blah blah. But to make it that this, like you said, this whole series of hoops to jump through to make this very unbelievable situation, like it's like when somebody's telling you a really unbelievable lie and they really, really want you to believe it. And so there's just adding on and on one more little detail after detail just to try and make it seem a little more plausible. And it feels very convoluted and it's unnecessary. And it is just a way to be like, nope, see, we didn't want these two people to actually be the love interest. So bring back the boyfriend.
Which feels at times, like I said, kind of idiotic because it feels like they assume that the audience is so dumb they're just going to buy that cockamamie explanation.
Unless the movie's actually much smarter than we are, Chris, and that the wasting time song was a funny haha at the audience, just saying that it was all just their love interest is just a waste of time. They're telling us point blank that it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I think you're doing the heavy lifting for the movie. Well, and again, when you have the love interest being set up in the first 10 minutes of the movie and then he leaves, again, as this movie is about Amir Khan as the alien, that she has to get to him. And so that's why I was like, okay, this is just to set up the theme of the movie. The boyfriend's not coming back because, again, they're just using that as an opportunity to set up the themes, the bigger themes of the movie. And in the scene at the end of the movie where they're having this kind of big discussion between PK and His Holiness, as he's called, all of a sudden it's like, well, you ruined my relationship with my boyfriend. And they have the scene before where he touches her hand and he sees this boyfriend. It really is just like, why second guess yourself? Because all it feels like, realistically, if you ask me, is they did it so that they could have a sequel.
Yeah.
I mean, Amir Khan comes back at the end of the movie with Ranbir Kapoor in a cameo as the other alien that he's there with. But all I could think to myself was, okay, so they're going to make another one. And that's why he couldn't fall in love with her, because then where do you go from there? Like, what are the stakes then? Like, for the next movie, there are no stakes for the next movie.
She gets kidnapped.
Yeah. The easiest way to do it, though, is to just not have them be together at the end. So the next movie is who knows about what he meets
PK and some other,
somebody that she knows or something. I mean, again, when it comes to Indian romantic comedies, especially Hindi ones, like they tend to be kind of
comedy is a popular genre.
Well, and they tend to be like Shakespearean too, like they're connected. So in the sequel, it would be like her sister or something, and she would be connected to Jagu in some way or something, where it feels like all very connected and all very kind of fated to happen. But no, instead it's like we have to preserve the opportunity for a sequel by undercutting our entire movie's emotional climax by going, well, he learned to lie. Like, okay, movie, fuck you.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like fuck you, movie. I'm not that stupid, and neither is most of the audience.
And also, I don't want him to learn how to lie. That's kind of not great. Like,
he gave us something and we gave him something. Like, really? He taught you to love.
That we gave them chicken pox kind of way. Like, that's...
Yeah. Well, the natives gave us corn and we gave them smallpox. Like, that doesn't seem
Right.
like a fair trade.
No, like
Listen,
he told us how to unconditionally love each other and like understand and just, be honest with each other. And we said, nah, you need to learn how to lie and manipulate people so
so you can go destroy your alien
you
culture.
can go do, yeah.
Because what happens when the guy who knows how to lie goes to the planet where no one does? Then you've just become that Ricky Gervais movie.
Done. Yeah. Yeah. Next movie is PK, dictator. Like,
yeah, PK, alien fascist.
like we did the Charlie Chaplin thing this movie. Well, you can do a different Charlie Chaplin in the next movie.
Yeah, PK, the great dictator.
Yeah.
He shows up at the end of this movie. He's just like in full armor. He's like, all right, I'm here to subjugate these clowns.
Like, you taught me how to lie, motherfuckers.
Well, and that's such a weird message to leave.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's a weird way to leave your movie where it's like, but sometimes lying is okay.
Is that what it's saying?
Sure.
I guess,
don't
yeah.
know.
Well, the whole thing is like he is okay with her knowing that he loves her, but not saying it. And like, okay, so that honestly undercuts everything because he touched her hand, which means he would know whether or not she loved him, which
Yes.
she didn't then.
I guess not, because if she did, then he would know that and he loved her, so then he would have not a reason to say it.
Or was it just because she loved somebody else? That's what because she could love both of them. Knowing what we end up finding out.
No,
later in the
this is
movie.
monogamous world, not polyamorous.
But why
world.
would she still love someone else that like broke her heart and she spent it's so
What?
it's just it feels weird to bring back this wayward
but he
boyfriend
didn't
in the
break her
third act.
heart.
Yeah, I know. And then it's like, but he didn't. It's like, okay,
It's
movie.
all reversed the second she learns that information. Like, oh, all those feelings are
Yeah,
done.
and PK is just like, well, fuck me then, I guess. Like,
Well, fine, I'll just go. I had a really hard time here, folks. I didn't ask to come here.
yeah, I didn't want to stay on Earth for however
Fucking
long I've
clown
been here.
stole my remote, and then I had to go through all these stupid religions. You people are dumb.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the whole religious angle. So
Yeah.
about a third of the way into the movie, we have this kind of flashback where PK is telling Jagu all about like why he's doing what he's doing, because she runs into him and he's posting these God is missing leaflets and come find me at a well, literally find me at a well. And she's like, why are you looking for God? And so he tells her, everyone kept telling him to ask God to find your remote and God will help you. And so he went, and obviously doesn't understand that, God doesn't exist. And so he's having to deal with the ramifications of not understanding a belief
God
system.
doesn't work that way.
Right.
Is what we'll say.
And so he gets on this tear about the people on Earth that are supposedly talking to God are getting a wrong number, and they're misunderstanding or misrepresenting God, or in His Holiness's case, completely fabricating the God that he's talking to in his own image. I think it's interesting. This movie is not the movie to do it in, though, right?
No. We need it. The tone of this movie and what we're trying to talk about here, it has to be able to be pushed to a stronger level than it is. And I mean, look, I'm also looking at this through like our, Western eyes. I don't know how talking about religion in movies goes, in other places necessarily.
Not well. This movie was rather controversial when it came out, as one could assume, because it, quote, hurt religious sentiments, unquote.
Right. So maybe, who am I to say that it's not pushing enough, of the envelope. But for me personally, it doesn't really push too far. It doesn't push far enough to say anything truly, astounding, because it is just kind of saying like, yeah, everybody's, we're all just people.
As different as we all are, we're all the same.
Exactly, which is not a new sentiment. It's not nothing. It's nothing.
It's not even a clever sentiment.
No. And I mean, like, you want to really talk about how like differences in religion, like fucking destroy people. Like, yeah, you kind of touched upon it right at the beginning of the movie where that girl, Jagu's parents are like, I'm not gonna fucking talk to you. I mean, hell, in the last movie that we watched together,
Oh,
you gotta
K3G.
fucking get disowned from your family for fucking decades. Like, that's a big message on that shit. But this, it never pushes, it never goes there. There's never any real conflict behind it. Like, her dad gets mad, but it's always in kind of a play, but it's played for a joke. There's nothing real. There doesn't feel like any real stakes or consequences to this, differences of religion that do ultimately result in very big consequences.
Right.
So it feels like it, again, too cutesy for what it's trying to talk about, in my opinion. It doesn't push it hard enough.
I'm not saying you can't be cutesy when you talk about something serious like religion, but
not in a soft way. Like, you got to really go there. Yeah.
Well, we're adults, and like this movie's not made for kids, I don't think. Maybe it's made for like a younger audience, but I don't. It's made for a younger audience, but they would totally check out when they're talking about religion and God and all of that. Like, they would totally be on board with all of the kind of Chaplin-esque Buster Keaton slapstick running around mugging and shit that Amir Khan does in large portions of this movie. But like all the religious stuff and kind of the, gotcha. It's a lot of like gotcha sentiments. Like, what if we're all the same? Gotcha. Like, gotcha statements are the suckiest of them all because they're nothing other than like one person trying to be clever and the other person missing it. Like, yeah. And I'm pandering. I would say it's a number of, and again, infantile, juvenile, that comes to mind when you talk about gotcha statements, right? Like, they're gotcha statements, but they hold very little water outside of being just kind of like a throwaway. Oh, gotcha. And then move on. Like, all right.
Yeah.
I just
conversation enders.
Yeah. Right. Pretty much. Yeah. That's what they should be called. Like, all right, I'm done. Like, we're good here.
Well, it is what it is.
Right.
Okay.
I would really have a hard time believing that a younger audience would be into the second and third act of this movie. But the first act has a lot of really good kind of physical comedy with Amir Khan.
The first act is the best part of the movie, in my opinion. It is the most, it's the most fun. It's the most engaging. Amir Khan is great. I don't particularly like the music in this movie, and I will say that part, at least a good part of that is there really isn't a whole lot.
But there is, Jess. There's that one musical cue that they use every time he shows up that is like, it's like they got it out of, they went into an archive of the most obnoxious music possible and were just like, what can we find that's annoying and anachronistic and doesn't work in our movie made in 2014? Oh, I don't know. Something from a Fleischer cartoon from the fucking 20s. Like, but not good, mind you. Like, thinking about it makes me angry. Like, that's one of the things in this movie that is such a weird choice and such a ever present, constantly reinforced.
It's just like the same three notes, just
it's like Benny Hill slowed down. Like, there is no place in a movie like this.
Okay, but what I meant by music is I meant more so like, musical numbers as are, often in these movies, but there's really not a lot of them in this movie. And like I said, I'm not real unhappy about that because the ones that are in there, I'm not really all that crazy about.
They're just okay.
They're fine.
And the one about love is a waste of time, ends up really not mattering because it's ultimately a hollow. Yeah, it's a hollow song because it is exactly. It is the waste of time that it is claiming to be.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, like I said, maybe the movie is telling that's the foreshadowing is that, yep, this is going to go nowhere.
I think you're really doing the heavy lifting for the movie. And it's really unfortunate that the second and third act of this movie get really kind of bogged down in this pseudo-religious, serious debate about religion and organized religion. And it's less even about religion and more specifically about organized religion and the organizers of said religion. But I just wish it had been an entire movie of just Amir Khan doing his best Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Mr. Bean, because this is really Mr. Bean-esque in a way that most things aren't.
and a Pee-wee.
Yeah.
He gives us strong Pee-wee
man-child.
vibes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Just man-child. Very buff man-child.
Very, very good looking man-child.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
Yep.
The initial shot of this movie is Amir Khan walking out of the fog naked. So, and you see Amir Khan's booty in full display. So much to the point that the poster of this movie was him naked standing on the train track, which they got sued for and taken all the way to the Indian Supreme Court about because of it being possibly indecent. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that maybe answers some of your questions about the level of conservatism and how conservative the Indian culture can be. Obviously, I mean, just like our culture, there are pockets of conservatism, but I think Indian culture, at least my perception,
has more sway there.
It's very conservative, you know.
Yeah.
But again, like that kind of feels like it should have been something that the movie took to task. Like it feels like it's taking it to task by talking about religion and using religion as kind of the thing that they talk about all the things through. But I think it would have been more interesting to just have it be more a musing on kind of the weird anachronisms and idiosyncrasies of Indian life as a whole, less like just religion.
Right. And like, I understand going for the religious angle, as you know, there's a billion people in India.
And there's plenty of stuff to be mined. Like
there's a ton of different practicing religions within India. And it's also, and you know, very, very much a part of their culture in a way that our religion is not even part of our culture here. Generally, our religions are, even the most conservative of our religious, you know, people here are not as devout as certain sects elsewhere. But again, it just feels too cute. It just feels like there's no real stakes or concept. I think like my issue is that nothing ever really truly feels at stake in this movie. And when they're talking about a subject and they're trying to make a stance on a subject that does have very serious consequences in the real world.
And in the movie, which is one of the weirder fucking things that happens in this movie.
Yeah. But for our main characters, for the most part, especially like for the good first act and a half of this movie, there's really nothing to worry about.
Right.
At all. Because the first hour of the movie is a flashback, which arguably, yes, is the best part of the movie. But we know that it's leading up to where we are right now when the flashback starts. And after that, there's still really nothing to worry about. Like, it's just all very what are the stakes, really? Like, yeah, there's no real consequences.
Well, and if he gets stranded on Earth, so what? Like,
he's been stranded on Earth for a while since like when we pick up.
Right.
Not like a long time, but like a long enough time.
Right. Long enough to meet people, become friends, learn the language. Like, honestly, frankly, the movie probably takes a turn when he starts talking, which is just so terrible to really say. Yeah. But the way that they wrote his character, the moment, because, he is talking in the beginning of the movie only because, again, we're seeing him. We see the flashback when he can't talk after we hear him talking. But when it goes back to him being mute, like we see him at the beginning of the movie, he has to be emotive and really carry the bulk of the movie because he is the focus. He is the main character in those scenes where it's just him and all these other ancillary characters. Why they watched that and said, we need to do more than this. We need to really go into a more kind of cerebral direction, which is really, it decides to be this kind of, again, thought-provoking discussion on religion as a whole. And not really not even religions, just how we as humans deal with religion is more, because again, it's not even really about one religion, more just practicers of proselytizing almost. Yeah. And everything where he's just being mute and not talking is so fun because, again, you really get to see what Amir Khan can do as a performer. And then he opens his mouth. And I know Amir Khan is a charismatic actor, unlike very few other actors working. But they give him this weird thing where he has to act
and chew
betel nuts pan. He is eating pan. They had a panwala on set. He was having to eat 10 to 15 of those at a time to get that mouth to look right. It's it's called pon. So it's like a leaf that they wrap around like lime, or it's a betel leaf that they wrap around a nut called the betel nut. And when you chew it, it's kind of gives you a buzz.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's like a leaf wrapped around nuts, like betel nuts, and you put it in your mouth and you chew on it, and the leaf is what turns your mouth green. You can go to any Asian or Indian grocery store and they sell them pre-made in a container, and you could just buy them and eat them.
Huh. And so it's just to keep his mouth green?
But it's a minor stimulant. It dyes your mouth red, but it's like
red. That's why his lips are so crazy.
But it's a mild psychoactive. So he's like half high during the movie. Also, he said he had to eat about 10,000 of them during the movie. So
Jesus,
yeah,
that can't be good.
No. So again, like it's weird. Like there are these things that they do in this movie where they kind of are, making interesting choices, like having him eating pon the entire movie, but then they just have him act kind of dumb. Like in Three Idiots, the character that he plays in that movie is very similar to this one. But in that one, it's like he's so smart that he's detached from reality, and he kind of doesn't see a place for himself in the world because he kind of always feels like he's not part of it. He's like removed from it. And this was like the literal way of doing it is he's not from our planet. And I think when it's just he's weird but still human, I think that works better. I think literally making him an alien may be a step too far if you're trying to make him an alien but also have something to say about terrestrial problems. Because it's clever to have an alien comment on human problems, but when you don't have anything to say, no, it's not.
Well, and especially because I don't really understand the rules to how he learns things. Like, I know it's that they hold hands and he can read minds and understand things, and he has gained knowledge of the world, obviously, and of the world's religion. So he's absorbing other information when he's doing that, but he's not absorbing like human social cues.
Right.
And nuances and other understandings of things. So, and it's obviously all very convenient to keep the fish out of water, feeling going because, he needs to be so kooky and weird and goofy. So, he's an alien and not from here. But he doesn't really ever, other than the whole, I guess, learning to withhold truth is what we'll call it. He doesn't really grow or evolve much past where we pick up in the jail cell, right?
I would agree.
Like all of his evolution as a character is done effectively, so what I've gathered from Bollywood movies and what we've watched is that the first half of the movie is usually where American movies wouldn't even touch. Right, like that's all the stuff that happened before the movie started.
Be normally like a dialogue, like this happened before, or like it's like a 2-minute flashback. Things
that you would pick up through, various dialogue pieces, or maybe smaller flashbacks, or even not at all. Like it's just stuff that doesn't matter. But from what at least the movies that we've watched recently, I've gathered is that's kind of how the structure tends to go with Bollywood screenplays. And it's fine. Honestly, it's great because like I said, in the last few that we watched, that style really helps bond you with the characters over time because it's keeping you there a lot longer throughout a lot more stuff and a lot more, emotional growth than other movies would. But in this one, we have all of this growth. We have this essential, budding of growth that happens in this first act. And then it just kind of stops. And so neither of the lead characters really change all that much from where we meet them at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that takes away a lot of like the ability to like kind of like emotionally hit that bond like we have with characters in other movies, which makes this feel, all the more longer because you're not feeling as, attached to these people and caring about what's happening to them, emotionally and inner turmoil way because there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
They're just remaining the same until the movie ends. Because, like you said, there's a there could be a sequel.
Well, and Raj Kumar Hirani has said that there will be, and I mean, including Ranbir Kapoor, the actor opposite Amir Khan at the end of the movie, is now what I would probably the closest equivalent would be like he's the equivalent of Chris Evans now for a cinematic universe that they have been creating in India from the Brahmastra movies. He's like the centerpiece of that entire universe. Ranbir Kapoor and his character. So he's like a big deal now too. So I mean, he was a big deal then, but not as much as he is now, given kind of the success of that movie. But I don't even know if there's like a sequel. Well, the director has said it's going to happen with him and with Amir Khan and Ranbir Kapoor, which would be interesting. But I don't know if that story is interesting. Like maybe it is, but I don't want them to make another movie where it's about like skewering something and doing it really poorly, because Three Idiots showed that they could do it in an entertaining way. That's why I was really disappointed when Boman Irani, who's in this movie as Jagu's boss, the guy who's constantly wearing like running pants, he plays a massive part in Three Idiots. He is the professor who is kind of annoyed with Amir Khan's character, who's kind of, again, he's so smart that he can't learn in a traditional way type thing, and he butts heads with this professor. And he's really great in that movie. And he's like one of the emotional kind of pillars of that movie. And the fact that he's in this movie to just stand around is like, it's just so weird to me that they have people in this movie that they give nothing to do, who I know are great actors and other things. And then they have actors in this movie that they watch do great things, and then they decide to strip those fun things out of their performance 2/3 of the way through the movie. Like Amir Khan in the later half of this movie, it's not that he's bad. It's just, it's not as entertaining because he's not being given as much fun things to do. He's just being saddled with like a lot of gotcha dialogue. Yeah. And then a bomb explodes. Which was just like, so his friend that he meets, who helps him learn Bhojpuri, who helps him get to Delhi, that helps him out, who ends up finding the guy who stole his necklace that would help him get home, is coming to Delhi to help him prove that His Holiness, who bought the medallion but claimed it was from God, was lying, gets blown up and murdered by terrorists, Muslim terrorists. Yep. What the actual fuck? I was like, I thought that it was like a dream sequence or something. It felt so out of left field.
Yeah. I was just sitting there and I was hitting, I was well beyond the point where I'm like, all right, can we just get to the, inevitable end here of whatever this is going to be? And that happened. And I'm like, oh no. This is how they're going to choose to do the chat. This is how they're going to challenge the belief system of the religions now.
Well, I was wondering, like, what is the point of having that scene? Because it ultimately, like, it feels like they wanted to have something to say about violence and religion and how one can kind of foment the other. And they're just like, well, I was a Muslim terrorist. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Weird optics for a movie that was made in India.
They keep going, they just get to right at the edge of a place where they could make a big ass statement about something, and they just kind of like just nudge it a little and run the opposite direction, which, I mean, I guess fair considering, the backlash and whatever that they received for this movie. Penalties for things like this, I don't know what it would be. So, I don't know that I necessarily would be wanting to push the system too much either. But if you are going to do it at all, go hard.
Really do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, there's a good performance by Amir Khan in this movie. I think that is obviously the reason anyone should go out of their way to watch this movie. I think it's the Amir Khan absolutely. Performance. He's charming as hell. He's fantastic. Sure. But you know what? He's fantastic in everything. If it were just about
him.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, I'd be down.
What I think would have been the better, more charming, more fun, and more thoughtful approach, if we wanted to kind of take like a more thinking, philosophical approach to this plot, would just to have done the first half of the movie as the movie. and introduce so that would effectively be he gets to Earth, and then what happens, his remote gets taken away, and then he begins his journey learning about all these religions and seeing all the differences and similarities and coming to the conclusions that he comes to. We could meet a whole lot of really interesting characters throughout all of those religions, and then we can meet Jagu midpoint in the second act and have her already be in the midst of this issue that she's having with her problem with her family and her fiance and all of this stuff, and link it up there with His Holiness and that whole situation, and still include that. I think that it would have just been a better movie that way.
Well, it just, the character of Jagu ends up being such a non-character, and she ends up getting, in my mind, written out of the climax of the movie by the movie. The movie effectively says, like, she's no longer an important character because PK has made the decision that she is not, worth staying around for. And he wants to, like she said, walk away and let her go, and love will go and whatever. Like, if they make a sequel, I hope to God it has nothing to do with her. What is left to be told on her story other than, oh, hey, remember me? I knew you last time you were here. But other than that, like, their story is done, and their story ends up feeling like it, like you mentioned with your kind of rejiggering of the script. If they had made her less of the focus and made the person who should have been the focus, the person who's on the poster, doesn't even share a poster with her. Amir Khan should have been the focus. It should have been an Amir Khan performance for the ages, which there are flashes of that. It is very Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin. Like we've already said, there's a lot of physical comedy and emoting and mugging and vamping, like you've said, that Amir Khan does have to do. And he does it with a level of expertise that only comes with being a really fantastic actor. But the movie, for whatever reason, doesn't think that that's enough, which, again, maybe if we watch that version of the movie, it wouldn't be enough. But this is too much of something that I was not really interested in, at least the way this movie was talking about it and the way this movie wanted to have the conversation with us as an audience. And like you said, maybe it is a cultural differences are exacerbating the problem, but I can't write it off as all that. I think the director made the movie he wanted to make, and it was an immensely successful movie. But I think that what they're talking about is, like we've mentioned, it's just such a goo goo gaga baby version of talking about it. It's like, man, nothing else. Like, there was no other way to address this, or at least play down the religious angle of it. Look, I love having a good religious conversation with someone as much as the next person, but to go, we're all the same because we don't have a label on us, and all it is the clothes that we wear. Like, yes. How astute of you.
Yeah. Wow. Is that going to change? It's a very, very idealistic, black and white want to want to believe everyone can just be like, oh,
can't we all just get along?
It's just, oh, he wears something on his head, and she wears something that covers her face, and that guy wears something black with a collar in it. But really, we're all just people under that. Wow. Like, no. Like, what motivational poster is that you hang up in your, locker room? Like, that's like telling a depressed person, have you just tried to,
tried
not
smiling?
Be depressed? Like, have you just tried doing something you enjoy doing? That'll make you happy.
Well,
it is. It's a very sweet, but ultimately very dumb, nothing stance on something that really does have very serious consequences, as we see in this movie with the bombing.
The random bombing, just cause.
That also, like we said, doesn't really get a lot of talk.
They literally go, it was Muslim terrorists, that's it. And your friend died.
And your friend died.
It's all, and what's crazy is they use that as the reason to bring back the boyfriend, because they can't prove anymore that he bought it. So now they have to figure out another way to do it, which is the boyfriend, not, him just going and holding the hand of somebody in the audience and telling them things that he couldn't know. Without a shadow of a doubt, he couldn't know. And honestly, I just want to point this out. When she calls the Pakistani embassy and she's like, hey, I'm Jagu, I've been looking for Sarfaraz for however long. They're like, hold on, we've got him. Like, man, he put in no effort. He put in no effort to find her, huh? It's 2014, let's just call it, because this is the year the movie got made. Facebook exists. Twitter exists, social media. This is not, this movie almost feels like in a lot of ways like it exists in the 90s too. Because like they would have been able to find each other. Like we're farther along in 2014 than this movie thinks we are.
Yeah, nobody's making that kind of oops and that then finding that person on the internet.
Right.
Like no, you don't leave a note on your wedding day and your fiance not be looking up your ass like, to be like, what the fuck?
Going to where you lived or anything, just being like, okay, yeah, I must, like, again, it's like, it's the joke that I always say, like most of the episodes of Seinfeld wouldn't even work anymore because if they had cell phones, like all problems are solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't get a hold of Jerry. Like just whip out your cell phone and call him, dipshit. Like, there you go.
Right.
Are they going to be on time for the movie? I don't know. Just call them. You have a cell phone.
Just call them. Text them. They have the time.
They must not have been in that much of love if they're okay with just a letter being enough. Like that really, like if you really just boil it down to it, like what romance is there when the two people were okay walking away off of a fucking note with no personalization on it?
A pure note, just a note being like, hey, I can't do this. Bye. Hey, I realize that we've nothing I've said or done has indicated that this up to this point, but it turns out it's a problem for me.
Yeah. And they haven't even had like he didn't have an interaction with her family to make him think that they didn't like him either.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun alien movie with this weird religious side plot, like kind of side loaded into it that takes over everything. I would love to see a movie that's just Amir Khan just walking around and just like a Bildungsroman type thing where he's just like a road movie. He's just walking around, like you said, meeting new people, experiencing
learning stuff.
Yeah. Like where is that movie and why was that not enough? Because this was way too much of something that I and yourself clearly were not a fan of. So final thoughts on PK, Jess.
I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. I honestly don't think I can recommend this one. Just because for what it has, it's too long for the very small sentiment that it has to say, in my opinion. Now, granted, it is the 7th most, popular money making movie in India. So who am I to say? I guess. But for me, it didn't work.
I'm with you to an extent. Again, I think Amir Khan's performance kind of saves it for me, seemingly maybe a little bit more than it did for you. So I mean, I would definitely suggest checking it out if you're a fan of Amir Khan. Just know that second and third act, Amir Khan kind of gets lost in his own movie and then doesn't get an emotional resolution to anything.
Payoff, yeah.
He's just worse off at the end of the movie than he was at the beginning.
Yeah.
Really what we're being told. So it's just, for me, the promise of what this movie was, it delivered about 30% of my expectations. The rest was just this, religion and organized religion is so bad and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no shit. Like, yeah, yes.
Right.
Yes, it is. Thank you, movie. Like, can we go on to something else now? Do you have anything else to say? You want to talk about
how maybe, like, what do we want to, why is it bad?
Right.
Can you show us and expound upon those things? How about what can we do about it? How can we talk about it? No? Okay. No, it's just bad. Okay.
And also, why did no one say, oh, so now that they're all talking about the wrong numbers, they essentially view you as God and they're like following you as a religion effectively, like by doing what he did, right? Like they're following his cult of personality. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's really what His Holiness fucking stuff felt like. Like I don't know how any of that, the kind of religion works. I don't know. Like
he's a guru. He's a guru.
But it feels very, and it feels very culty, at least in the way this movie portrays it.
It is. He's a god man, is what it's called.
Yeah. So.
But that's what he would have become. That's what PK would have become if he had just stuck around.
That's effectively what he was. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The optics of the movie are strange.
It's it doesn't know quite what point it wants to land on. And look, I get that also might be a part of the controversy where it couldn't ever maybe it never outright could have said something so overtly negative. So it kind of had to dance around a little bit.
Yeah.
In order to not get some really, really, terrible, terrible backlash. But again, if I'm just feel like if you're going to talk about it and do it, just go all the way.
Yeah, don't tiptoe around it, because we can tell you're tiptoeing, and it's apparent, I think, is the best way of putting it. It's like it's readily apparent to me that they were concerned about doing any sort of like deep, subversive, even religious kind of criticism or analysis. So on that note, we'll take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast of Indian Cinema Month. So in the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about Moondram Pillai, which is a silent Indian cinema film from the 80s. So there you go. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be joined by the one and only, the man among men, Mr. Mike White of the Projection Booth will be joining us. So that's always a welcome addition to the show to have Mr. Mike White over here talking Indian cinema. Until then, Jess, where could people find you on the internet if they wanted to find you?
You can find me on Instagram at WriterJessFired. Pretty much everything I'm doing works its way over there in some capacity. What about you, Chris?
As for me, weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can find this show, the Bollywood Cinema Club, which is the show that this show and subject material more or less spawned, along with the aforementioned Projection Booth, Father Malone's Astounding Tales of the Public Domain, a soon-coming music podcast. There's all kinds of stuff, and you can find it all over at weirdingwaymedia.com. As for this show, culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast, all the cool places that you can go to donate financially, but to do non-financial things, just head on over to iTunes and Spotify, like, rate, and review the show. That's all you got to do. It doesn't cost anything, just costs your time, which maybe it's more valuable to you than money it is for me. Jess, thank you so much for joining me. This has been fun, even if the movie was, little disappointing.
It was all right.
It was fine. And we'll catch you on the next episode.